8? Maybe. 9? Yeah, okay. But 10? No. Nobody beats the Kraken 10 times in a row. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken finally beat the Edmonton Oilers. Sure, they're missing their two best forwards and probably their best defenseman, but they beat the Oilers nonetheless and do it in very decisive fashion. 6-1, an absolute stomping of Edmonton. Which, yeah, sure, that's not the most productive thing the Kraken could be doing right now, especially with that tight race to the bottom, the tankathon, and battle for one of those especially top 4 spots in this draft that could be very valuable the way that it looks like this draft is shaking out. But that's the future's problem. As for right now, I still think this is kind of a game that the Kraken in some ways needed to win just for morale reasons. This is an Oilers team that had beaten them 9 straight times with just the one loser point for the Kraken in those 9 losses, which included a game just a few nights ago where Edmonton was missing their 2 best players and still managed to hang on to beat the Kraken. So then, to come back home, where they're now not only missing those 2 top forwards in Draisaitl and McDavid, but also missing Ekholm, I think the Kraken kind of needed to get this one just to have something to look back on when it comes into next season, and they need to start beating this team a little bit more regularly than once every 10 games. And besides, with opening day or opening night at the other end of the city for the Mariners, it just fit the good vibes of the night to get 2 wins in the city, which the Mariners did their half. It took them quite a while to score, but they do end up winning that one 4-2 over the A's with some late inning heroics. So I suppose in some ways a pretty similar style of game to what the Kraken have been used to having this season, but not the type of game that they would have in the same night against the Oilers. No, this one was a fairly atypical game for this 24-25 Kraken team, as we pick up with our heroes in the start of the second period, with not a lot happening in the first. I mean, I guess there's a couple of things that are worth mentioning. The Kraken do have a very good penalty kill early on in the first. The Oilers actually have 2 power plays, but one of them ends as fast as it begins with a matching call to go to 4-on-4. Nothing happens there. The Kraken then send the Oilers back to a power play where they don't get a matching call, so that does go all the way through, but the Kraken, a fantastic job of killing that off. And then nothing really happens until in the last minute, the Oilers do find the back of the net on a tight angle chip shot off of a couple rebounds and some hacking whacking at a puck that just the Kraken couldn't get a stick on, or I suppose more glove on, and I don't necessarily mean just a cord, as Vince Dunn also tries to glove this puck down. It bounces up in the air and then gets hit by a high stick. That turns out to be why Vince Dunn just stops playing right as the shot ends up coming, and yeah, you'd still like to see Dunn continue with the play until he hears a whistle, which he doesn't do, but at least the reason that he stopped playing to protest the touch of a high stick was correct. That goal comes off the board, and we go to the first intermission, still scoreless. And that brings us back to the start of the second period, which, as it turns out, would be quite the second period for the Kraken. Easily their best second period of the season, which is something that I've said now a few times here over the last few weeks. All of a sudden, the month of March is at least inconsistent for the Kraken in the middle frame, which is a drastic improvement from the just consistently downright terrible that they had been all season long through the end of February. Either way, they were absolutely dominant here in this middle 20 minutes, and that's somewhat aided by the fact that the Oilers were downright terrible in their own end of the ice, which, believe me, I know sounds completely backwards, and if I had just seen the box score of this game, I would have assumed that they just got the 2 teams switched around somehow. But I watched the whole thing happen, and sure enough, it is the Kraken who absolutely light up the Oilers here in the period, and it gets off to a hot start as the Kraken get an early power play, and building off the success that they had on the power play in the previous game against the Flames, or at least the one power play where they had success and scored, they try that same play, the tic-tac-toe pass down the middle of the ice, down next to the net, and even down to the guys they have on the ice for the play itself. It's Burakovsky across to McCann back across, and down to the net on the back door for Schwartz, the tap-in, but that last pass is broken up, so the Kraken get creative, mix things up, and do exactly the same play, just mirrored on the other side. The Oilers don't learn from the previous play and just allow it to happen. It's McCann across to Burakovsky across to Schwartz on the other side of the back door, and this time the tap-in goal does connect. Schwartz gives the Kraken the 1-0 lead with the power play goal, and the Kraken are as Forsland would say, off and running. And Schwartz in particular is especially off to the races, as just a couple minutes later, almost exactly 2 minutes later, he picks up a turnover in Edmonton's end of the ice. Again, not playing particularly well in their own end. It's an ill-advised no-look attempted a dump out across the blue line that just goes right to the tape of Schwartz as he's skating back in. He gets up to the face-off circle, or up near the face-off dot, a dangerous location with all the time and space to pick his spot, take his shot, and he puts it perfectly into the top far side corner of the net. Either way, beats Pickard high and gives the Kraken the 2-0 lead. It's Oilers 0, Schwartz 2. Now from there, if we're being perfectly honest, following Schwartz's 22nd and 23rd of the season, which does now lead the team, it is a bit back and forth, both teams getting good chances. The Oilers still giving the Kraken every chance to continue to extend the lead in the first half of the second period, but the Kraken also getting a couple chances the other way. Decord able to respond to those, an absolute brick wall and net pretty much all night long, and that does include another Oilers power play that the Kraken do a good job of killing off. Admittedly, it doesn't look nearly as dangerous without Draisaitl and McDavid. Still, as we cross over into the second half of the second period, the Kraken are maintaining that 2-goal lead and would finally start to extend it pretty quickly as we get into that last 10 minutes of the second. It's almost down to the second that the clock strikes 10 to mark the midway point of the second period. The Oilers defensively just completely fold like an old baseball glove around a fastball, though unlike that glove, they were not catching anything, and the Kraken take advantage, pitching fastball after fastball. The first one is a Larson shot from well up by the blue line that is tipped beautifully in front of the net by Yanni Newman. No chance for Pickard there. That one's in the back of the net. The net does catch it, and that makes it 3-0 Kraken. Not long after that, though, in fact, just 16 seconds later, that same line, that same group of 5 players back into the offensive end. It's Newman again with the shot that this time Pickard is able to respond to. It was more of a changeup and just wanted to get it on net and get something going, maybe hope for a rebound, which does end up behind the net. Capo Kakko picks that up, takes it around to the far side where the Oilers have just completely left him alone, so he gets an easy shot off. Again, Pickard able to respond, bounces back to Kakko, but what the Oilers don't respond to, and what Pickard has no chance to respond to himself, is that Matty Beniers is now on the far side of the net, and Kakko just backhand passes it across the crease to Beniers, who taps it in, and that makes it 4-0 Kraken, Beniers picking up his 18th of the season. And then almost as if Pickard had done something to wrong the entire Oilers bench all at once, they just let the Kraken march right back into the offensive end 33 seconds later, completely uncontested once again. This time it's Eberle who wants to get in on the fun, and just like Schwartz, who got that 5-on-5 goal by just skating up into some free space in the faceoff circle, Eberle does the same, fires off the shot. Once again, it's perfectly placed into the top corner. He buries it to make it 5-0 Kraken. Unfortunately, that one wouldn't quite stand. It would go to replay, and, well, just like the Kraken had one taken off the board for a missed stoppage for a high stick, the Oilers get this challenge right as well, as unfortunately Wright was a couple feet pretty obviously offside, so that comes off, but the Kraken would not be denied. Again, just a matter of seconds after the puck is dropped, taking that goal off the board, the Kraken back in the offensive end. Riker Evans barely keeps a puck in across the blue line, and if we're being perfectly honest, I think there's at least a chance that if you found the right angle and the right exact frame, that this puck might have actually gotten all the way across the blue line and this would have been offside. Either way, the Oilers didn't find enough to bother challenging a second Kraken goal in a row, as that's exactly what happens. Evans pulls it off the blue line, or wherever he pulls it from, fires it down at the net where Andrei Burakovsky is wide open in front of Pickard. It goes off his stick to his skate, back to the stick on the far side, which is a quick back and forth that the puck does in his feet. That throws Pickard off enough that I don't know if Burakovsky meant to do all that on purpose, but it definitely makes the goal basically a tap-in for him as it gets back to his stick on the forehand, and the Kraken this time will not be denied, especially because the Oilers don't bother to challenge it, where there was at least a small chance that you might have found that right exact frame to show that it was just across the blue line, but we'll never know, as a few seconds later the puck drops and the Kraken have definitively this time a 5-0 lead, which they would get a couple more chances to expand on as we get into the final minutes of the second period, right up until the Oilers get another power play late in it. The Kraken not as good a job of killing this one off, though. Decord is strong in net again. Then the Kraken get a power play with just 30 or so seconds left. They don't score on that or on the minute and a half or so that bleed over into the third, and a third period where I mean, the Kraken are just never going to give up a 5-goal lead, really regardless of when a potential comeback would start, which for the Oilers, they do unfortunately end up breaking up the shutout to at least get 1 goal on the board. That comes just a few minutes into the third, and it does come off some more chaos around the Kraken net, this time truly in the feet, and well, for Decord, he's trying to reach out and grab it, but it's bouncing around the feet of especially Montour, who ends up accidentally kicking it back out to Hyman, who has enough of a lane to lift it over the pad of Decord and into the far net. Just a small window opens up and he's able to put it into. I mean, really not that small of a window. Either way, the Oilers get the 1 goal, which the Kraken do fairly quickly respond to just to really put this game away. After what was actually a couple of pretty nice saves for Rodrigue, who had taken over in net for the Oilers in the third, on a Kraken power play that immediately followed that goal for the Oilers. He actually had a couple pretty nice saves to start out the period, and then 2 more good ones on this Kraken power play. I don't even think the Oilers necessarily expected their emergency call-up to play any minutes whatsoever, with Skinner getting hurt the previous night on the first half of their back-to-back, and then Pickard just being left out to dry in the second period by the team here in the second half of the back-to-back, which, as far as that's concerned, for the Kraken, not only were the Oilers missing their 2 best forwards and their best defensemen, they were also on the second half of a back-to-back. Either way, they're able to take advantage of that and put this one away. Back at 5-on-5, they wouldn't be denied, and it's McCann who channeling the good vibes of opening day in Seattle. It's a bouncing puck that goes off the arm or glove of Acimont on the far side of the net. Nobody really knows where it went. It just bounces up in the air out to the other side. The only person that seems to track it is Jared McCann. He winds up and backhand smacks it out of the air. Baseball bat swing. Well, you don't see a lot of baseball players approach the plate from a backhand swing. Either way, it's a baseball swing out of midair into the net to give the Kraken the 6th goal of the game and final goal of the game for McCann, his 18th of the season. And honestly, given how the Mariners were hitting the ball up until pretty much that exact same moment in time at the other end of the city, you might have thought that McCann, given this goal, might actually have a summer job lined up for him after the game. Fortunately, the Mariners did start to hit the ball at that point. Maybe they saw that highlight and were inspired. Maybe not by the approach that McCann had with the backhand swing, but it worked for him, and well, the Mariners found the way to hit a couple over the fence, so yeah, everything turns out well. The Kraken do get a few more chances and really do control the rest of the third period. Not that there was much left to control at that point. The outcome of the game was pretty much just a matter of how many more goals could be scored. None are. We get to that 6-1 victory. The Kraken, their first win over the Oilers in quite a long time. And as far as the whole race for the bottom and trying to get one of those top 4 picks is concerned, yeah, the 2 points in the standings don't help the Kraken there, but the good news for them is that 2 of the 3 teams that they're right up there with, in the Flyers, Predators, and Sabres, ended up winning. The 2 teams that end up winning being the Flyers and Sabres. Meanwhile, the Predators did have a lead in the third period, but end up blowing that to the Blues, so they do secure a loss and are getting closer to having that third spot locked up, but both the Flyers and Sabres are very much within reach for the Kraken, so that 4th spot still very possible, even without winning one of the top 2 picks via the lottery. But you know what? For one night, I think we can put all that aside and just enjoy a fun win at home against a team the Kraken have struggled quite mightily against for quite some time, even if they were missing 3 of their best players, if not their 3 best players, than they were on the second half of a back-to-back. The Kraken still got that monkey off their back, hopefully, and that'll open things up going forward. It's still important for the team morale-wise to win a few games here over the course of the rest of the season, which isn't a lot of games, so yeah, just win 2 or 3 more, and that should set you up pretty well for one of those top 4 spots. And if that's going to be the case, I think this game was a good one to be one of those wins, and especially to do it in dominating fashion in front of the home crowd. And even beside that, from a team perspective, you got some good performances from the places you want to see it most in those young players, especially that first young line of Beniers, Kakko, and Newman. All 3 of them end up with points, 2 of them end up with goals, and then you also get some pretty good contributions from guys like Vince Dunn, Decord, who's been a bit cold here since that Four Nations break, had maybe his best game since the Four Nations break, and yeah, just in general, a good all-around game from the team. Really, the only complaint that I can even really think of would be Dunn not playing to the whistle on what could have been Edmonton's first goal, could have been the first goal of the game. But I don't want to harp on that too much, especially considering Dunn did have a fantastic game otherwise. along with a lot of his teammates. So as we get to the Kraken 3 stars, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you do want to help decide Kraken 3 stars in games like this one, where there are plenty of options, you can help support a little bit more than you already are by watching at this point by going to the link down below and supporting on Patreon as well. The first 2 stars I feel like are somewhat obvious. I mean, Jaden Schwartz has to get one of them. He gets the first 2 goals for the Kraken, and if you're the type of person that's into the game-winning goal thing, when the game-winning goal happens less than halfway through the game, he does end up getting that with both the first and second goals. And then the second star, even though the Kraken didn't need as fantastic a performance out of him as he ends up giving them, Joey Daccord still ends up stopping 36 of 37. A fantastic night for Daccord and some pretty good saves in there, especially early in the first. He had a couple very nice saves that kept the Kraken in the game and kept the momentum from maybe starting to lean towards the Oilers. And obviously gets helped out a little bit by that high stick that takes the first goal off the board, but still a fantastic night from Daccord. And then the third star, you could go any number of different ways. It's obviously easy to go with a guy like Newman, who's continuing to play well, gets 2 more points in this game, and just in general seems to really belong at the NHL level. Just now, 6 or 7 games into his NHL career, he looks like he's been playing with the team all season long. Or there's been years Kakko Burakovsky has 2 points and played pretty well in this game. In the end, though, I think I got to go with Jared McCann. He also has 2 points, a goal, and an assist. The assist, by the way, his 33rd of the season, which does match his career high in a single season. I think pretty safe to say he'll probably end up getting his career high in assists this season, even though the goals have tapered off pretty significantly with the giant cold patch he went through pretty much all of January and February, and even a chunk of March. Either way, McCann is still finding ways to help the Kraken get on the board, and it's started to look a lot better here over these last couple weeks. Hopefully that baseball goal, which is kind of the reason that I'm going to give him the 3rd star here, just for nothing else than the vibes of a baseball goal on opening day. It seems fitting, but hopefully that is something that can, I mean, there's only 9 games left, but hopefully you can get a few more and at least get over the 20 goal mark by the end of the season. But anyway, as always, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars of the game would be, how you feel about the Kraken finally beating the Oilers for the first time in 10 attempts, and how we felt about maybe if you did get to watch some of that Mariners game where they didn't bother scoring until, the 8th inning? Or I guess they had 1 going into the 8th, and then they score, is it 3 runs on 2 home runs in the 8th? Something like that. I couldn't really watch all of it since I was a lot more focused on the Kraken game, but a good start to the Mariners season. Let me know about whatever you're thinking down in the comments, and until next time, 2 games coming up against the Dallas Stars, which, yeah, if the Kraken could just do the whole thing where you play really well but still find a way to lose in regulation, maybe by a goal, that would be helpful for the future, but at least for this one, it was fun to win and win the way the Kraken did. Until those games against the Stars, though, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!